First, we're going to start with Lebanon. Second wave of explosions struck Lebanon. Walkie-talkies were exploded yesterday. We're going to cover it a little bit again. And we're, of course, going to cover the way that the Western media is looking at the story and hyping it up. This is an act of terror. Definitionally, it is a war crime. It is also an act of terror, regardless of the purpose of this being like, oh, taking out like Hezbollah commanders or whatever the way that Israel is presenting it. It does not matter. The methods are completely unacceptable. Booby trapping civilian telecommunications devices that fucking doctors and nurses use is completely unacceptable. Trying to assassinate people who are like not only declared enemy combatants, but are not in the process of war, and also simultaneously like living amongst civilians, and also simultaneously like MPs, like members of the fucking parliament, because Hezbollah is not only a militant group, but also has active seats in the Lebanese parliament, killing all of these people that are a part of like daily life, especially in southern Lebanon, that work on civil affairs, is insane. Okay, it is an act of terror, which is why I always reiterate, if Hezbollah did this to members of the Knesset and Israeli occupying force members who are not in Gaza, who are not in the West Bank, who are not operating in a military capacity, who are simply at home, who are simply at their markets, at their grocery stores, okay, who are tucking their kids in. If Hezbollah somehow was able to like secure the telecommunications devices and like explode them in a similar manner, the entire world would consider it an act of terror that is unconscionable and completely unjustifiable. And every single person that wants to defend Israel also recognizes that reality as well. Now, of course, there is no role reversal. There is no way that the role reversal could happen, because you have to be a massively powerful country backed by the most powerful country on the planet to be able to intercept logistics such as this one. So Israel, knowing full well that Hezbollah would never be able to return the favor, can operate it with the false moral notion that like they had to do this and there was no other way to go about it. And for those of you who ask, what could be done in this situation? Like, do you not want to fight against Hezbollah? Like, they're bombing northern Israel. Like, what do you mean? The answer is simple. And it's the exact same for the Ansar Allah movement, the Houthis as well. Stop the genocide. That's it. Stop the fucking genocide. Secure and facilitate a ceasefire and hostage deal. Stop the fucking genocide and start doing diplomacy. Yeah, Chris Cuomo and many others are saying dumb shit. Why don't you mention that pages were on members of a terrorist organization that is committed to destroying Israel? Would you have been defending Al-Qaeda when America was lighting them up in Iraq? What did a 9-year-old girl who was killed do to deserve that, Chris? Insinuating that anyone who questions how operations unfold, including civilian casualties, is siding with the terrorists, is a deeply ugly rearing of our past. Would you cheerlead going back into Afghanistan? For the record, yes, Chris Cuomo would cheerlead going back into Afghanistan. That is precisely what he's doing here. Where's proof of a 9-year-old dying? Dog, there was a funeral. What are you talking about? You think they're just like faking it? Do you think Lebanon is not like a normal... Dude, this is right here. This is just straightforward. Like, Arabs are just incapable of ever being real victims and humans. I didn't see it, bro. I mean, there you go. A 9-year-old girl killed in pager attack is mourned in Lebanon. Fatima Abdullah was a 4th grader. There is a harrowing accounting of how she was assassinated by the state of Israel. Pager starts beeping. She picks it up. It's in the kitchen. As she's in the process of delivering it to her dad, her fucking head explodes. The pager explodes her head. Blood splatters across the walls. That is how it was recounted in Al Jazeera. If you wanted to know, her parents said she was studying to learn English. There was also an 11-year-old boy that also died on the first day. Fatima was in the kitchen on Tuesday when a pager on the table began to beep. Her aunt said she picked up the device to bring it to her father and was holding it when it exploded, mangling her face and leaving the room covered in blood, she said. Fatima was trying to take courses in English. Miss Moussaoui said she loved English. Just like a James Bond movie, dude. This is why I said, yeah, you see this kind of stuff in James Bond movies, except it's the villains that do this kind of shit. It's not the heroes that do this kind of shit. Obviously, it's a movie. Who gives a fuck? But you have to understand, like, in the black-white moral dynamic that you express in American media, in movies, no fucking heroes doing this shit. It's always villains that do this shit. This is objectively an act of terror, and it is also a war crime. Here's a GOP congresswoman joking about the pagers, by the way.
With the pagers and how the walkie-talkie. They killed an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. Huh?
She asked if we have our pagers on you. Why do you want them to explode? Is that what you're insinuating?
Yeah, are you threatening us? They killed an 8-year-old and 11-year-old yesterday.
I don't think murder and death is a laughing matter, man. You find it amusing though, huh?
Animals, dude. That's it. Animals. People in Lebanon have been interviewed on this process, and they literally are terrified of using their regular household items. That's terror. That is the purpose of terrorism. Because Israel, time and time again, has shown that they do not fucking care about just regular human beings living inside of the Lebanese borders. They tried to make this seem as though this is like a masterful gambit, a successful strike against Hezbollah, not recognizing that they fucking blew up a shit ton of civilians, both members of the parliament, and also even like fucking 2 of the people that died were like healthcare people, 2 children, 2 medical professionals. You have no way of ensuring that a regular civilian telecommunications device is going to only stay in the hands of, the militant operatives. Besides the ridiculous reality that like you were never going to be able to successfully plant these exclusively in the hands of like Hezbollah generals or militants or whatever the fuck. The question is, even if you were to do that, it's still completely ridiculous. Even if you had a way of giving this exclusively to Hezbollah generals when they are around their, families, living inside of their own state, doing something like this still constitutes a war crime. These are not soldiers in combat. There are rules for war. You also have to understand something. Beirut blast, Lebanon rocked by wave of handheld radio blasts as solar energy systems explode. Israel's defense minister declared a new phase of the war. I've heard, I didn't see any like confirmed reports of the solar panels blowing up. Unless you're Israel or Russia, no, that's not correct at all. Russia does not, under international rules and laws, get away with it. The only way that they get away with it is because they do not abide by those standards, and they are outside of the periphery. Okay, they're outside of the realm of influence of the West. Israel gets to do Russia shit and still be firmly planted in the heart of the international rule-based order. Emma Vigeland is correct. If any military, a militant group in a Muslim majority country detonated bombs in a synchronized manner across civilian areas, killing dozens and injuring thousands, the New York Times would accurately call it as a terrorist attack. For Israel, it's a display of technical might. Yeah, UN human rights expert today condemned the malicious manipulation of thousands of electronic pagers and radios to explode simultaneously across Lebanon and Syria as terrifying violations of international law, because that's precisely what it is. But you have all outlets in the Western world refusing to reckon with that reality and covering it as like an incredible achievement. This is actively making the Americans who read these papers dumber and more violent. You are manufacturing consent to make Americans more aggro on this stuff. You are normalizing these kinds of actions. If you live in the Western world and if you truly have any semblance of morality, you cannot look at this and go, this is a fucking solid ass thing that Israel did. They done pulled this off again. I do want to mention once again that like, this is a totally separate country. This isn't Gaza. These are not Palestinians. These are civilians in a totally separate country that happens to neighbor Israel. Now, that greatly expands in the eyes of the Israeli government. That greatly expands like the permission base that they have when America doesn't say anything about it and basically supports it and continues giving weapons to Israel after Israel does this in direct contravention with international humanitarian law. Basically, this opens up an entirely new realm of possibilities for Israel where they're like, oh, I guess I could do this to whoever the fuck I want to. That's number one. Number two, just a somber reminder that Benjamin Netanyahu also called American college students protesting Israel's apartheid and genocide terrorists as well. Just think about that. They consider valid targets all around the world. AP, Qassem Qasir, a Lebanese analyst close to Hezbollah, said the detonating devices actually struck mostly civilian workers within the group and non-military security officials, which has allowed it to contain the impacts of its war effort. Analysts say the attacks were not a crippling blow. Nasrallah acknowledged that they were a severe blow, but vowed would emerge stronger than before. Hezbollah continued to launch rockets over the border Wednesday and Thursday, including one that killed 2 Israeli soldiers. Israel routinely does this. They did this in Gaza. They'll go, oh, we've overtaken Khan Yunis. Oh, we've overtaken this area. We've overtaken that area. We have completely successfully dismantled Hamas in North Gaza. And then what happens? A week later, an entire battalion gets murked. So you didn't do that. So you just lied. All you did was reduce North Gaza into rubble and kill a shit ton of civilians. You didn't even touch Hamas. And they're doing this exact same thing now in Lebanon. They have one speed, dude. They have one speed. They have one move. They just kill a shit ton of civilians or try to kill military commanders, but like literally fail to do so, and then end up blowing up a whole bunch of people. And then they go, we did it. We did it. They do the fucking like third place champagne meme. You know, they're like, yeah, we did it. We got him. We got him. And then the media's like, they got him. They did such a good job. And then the next day, bombs are still flying. So you didn't do it. You didn't do shit. You did not achieve a strategic military goal here at all. All you did was terrify the Lebanese people and probably galvanize and embolden Hezbollah. You made them obviously a more successful political operation now because you're giving them very good reason to fight back. That's it. If I'm living in Beirut, if I'm a Lebanese guy, okay, and I see a bomb explode at the marketplace and it's an Israeli bomb and I see everybody celebrating it, it doesn't matter what my background is. I'm gonna be like, I am in support of whoever is going to stop that. I am in support of whoever the stops this. That's it. I don't want bombs exploding in my goddamn neighborhood. Analysts said Hezbollah will be able to regroup militarily and find communication workarounds. Detonating devices hit workers in Hezbollah civilian institutions, including healthcare, media operations, and fighters, dealing blow to groups' operations beyond battlefield. There you go. You blew up the eyeballs of the dude that's doing like Hezbollah edits on Twitter. That's who you did. That's who you blew up. Good job. Now you still have missiles being lobbed into northern Israel. What happened? It didn't stop. If that was the goal, it didn't stop. Good job, dude. You killed a nurse. Like, congratulations. Even Lebanese people who do not support Hezbollah as a political party support them as a resistance movement? Of course. So Israel broke international law? Oh, absolutely. Yes. Numerous. Attacking those declared enemy combatants when they're not in combat is a violation of international humanitarian law. Attacking people using booby-trapped communications devices that civilians use are a violation of international humanitarian law. They violated numerous international laws in an effort to do this, and they have done that nonstop, and seemingly they will never stop. Exploding pagers and radios, a terrifying violation of international law, says UN experts from Geneva. UN human rights experts today condemned the malicious manipulation of thousands of electronic pagers and radios to explode simultaneously across Lebanon and Syria as terrifying violations of international law. The attacks reportedly killed at least 32 people and maimed or injured 3,250, including 200 critically. Among the dead are a boy and a girl, as well as medical personnel. Around 500 people suffered severe eye injuries, including a diplomat. Others suffered grave injuries to their faces, hands, and bodies. These attacks violate the human right to life, absent any indication that victims posed an imminent legal threat to anyone else at the time, the expert said. Such attacks require prompt, independent investigation to establish the truth and enable accountability for the crime of murder. The pagers and radios were reportedly distributed mainly among people allegedly associated with the Hezbollah movement, which includes civilian and military personnel. To the extent that international humanitarian law applies, at the time of the attacks, there was no way of knowing who possessed each device and who was nearby. Simultaneous attacks by thousands of devices would inevitably violate humanitarian law by failing to verify each target and distinguish between protected civilians and those who could be potentially attacked for taking a direct part in hostilities. Such attacks could constitute war crimes of murder, attacking civilians, and launching indiscriminate attacks, in addition to violating the right to life, the expert said. Humanitarian law additionally prohibits the use of booby traps disguised as apparently harmless portable objects were specifically designed and constructed with explosives, and this could include a modified civilian pager, the expert said. Now, remember, when you go to like other liberal outlets, when you go to CNN, when you go to New York Times, or you go to other like liberal commentators that are celebrating these attacks, and calling me a terrorist and like fantasizing about me dying in Lebanon because I'm closely associated with Hezbollah or whatever, remember that they're not being serious about this kind of thing at all. They're simply shooting the shit and they're celebrating the evil acts that Israel has committed once again. These are adults. These are adults who do care about like actual rules and the law and even sometimes the morality of the situation. Understand that there is a reason why the things that I said as soon as I found out about this are damn near identical to what the fuck the UN is saying now with their legal experts. Because if you have a moral compass and if you have a bare minimum elementary understanding of international human rights, you can recognize what Israel did was unconscionable. Although, yes, laws don't replace morality, in this circumstance, this is both illegal and immoral. So it is also a war crime to commit violence intended to spread terror among civilians, including to intimidate or deter them from supporting an adversary. The experts warned a climate of fear now pervades everyday life in Lebanon. So they accomplished that goal as well, which was to make Lebanese people fearful that their household appliances might explode. States must bring justice to those who ordered and executed these attacks, including by exercising universal jurisdiction over war crimes. This is what the adults in these supposedly important institutions, these arbiters of justice that are phenomenally important to maintaining the rule-based international order, are actually saying. That's the real assessment. That is the assessment of adults. But if you look at the New York Times, the way they're writing about it, the gray lady, the paper of record, they're calling this a Trojan horse in celebration of the ingenuity of Israel. Yet again, they found a bold new way to do terrorism, and that's awesome. That's the way that they're covering it. And of course, the American public that is primed into justifying any amount of atrocity against those who are automatically declared enemy combatants. If you're black, you're brown, you're in the third world, or if you're not immediately within the periphery of the United States of America, if you're not immediately within a Western power, you automatically assume these guys had it coming, they deserved it. And it's articles like that from the New York Times that basically reinforce this dynamic. This dynamic goes against international human rights. They do not want to hear that. They do not want to understand that. It probably makes them feel bad, even for a brief moment, because these are also other institutions that are supposed to be important institutions that they care about. Liberals love talking about how much they care about human rights, liberty for all. But when they are at odds, when that perspective that they want to maintain is at odds with the reality, then they just kind of avoid looking into it. Here's what Israel's been doing. After intensive Israeli airstrikes in southern Lebanon, the IDF publishes a list of guidelines for civilians in several communities and cities in northern Israel. The guidelines apply to civilians in the Merom HaGalil Regional Council. The IDF calls on civilians in those areas to reduce movement outside of homes, avoid large gatherings, guard the entrances to the community, and remain close to bomb shelters. The guidelines are until further notice, the IDF says. Fire belts in southern Lebanon. Israel's going hard. Israel's going hard, blowing up southern Lebanon right now, and they're gearing up for any sort of retaliation in northern Israel. There were journalists at the fucking funeral where the walkie-talkies exploded. Like, they were like Western journalists. So you're not even fucking safe. Like, technically, if you are anywhere where Israel has like set his sights on, set his crosshairs on, you were just not safe. This was a good take that I saw on Twitter. Why do so many health workers have Hezbollah pagers? Because Hezbollah pager isn't a real thing. Because that's what happens when supply chains are contaminated. Just because the propaganda needs you to be very stupid to believe it doesn't mean you're obligated to become that stupid. Please open your eyes and open your minds a little bit. This is exactly the same principle that I saw when like the Nord Stream pipeline exploded, and then the media was like, Russia did it to itself. And it literally made no sense. It just made no sense, but the media still said it. And there were plenty of people who also repeated those talking points without even thinking about it. Once you intercept shipments of civilian communications devices, you have no way of fully knowing that those devices that are contaminated with explosives is going to be in the hands of civilians or people that you have considered your enemy. It does not work that way. Political parties and armed groups who don't like or who you don't like or whatever, don't buy their supplies in big Looney Tunes box stamps, Bad Guys Inc. Does nobody understand how organizations source supplies? Has nobody ever had a job? Whether or not you're a big fan of Hezbollah ideologically or do not give them critical support in various political and armed actions is utterly immaterial here. You do not send weaponized electronics into the supply chain. Freak shit. The U.S. did this in Afghanistan. They had no idea what they were doing there. So they started arresting any Afghani wearing a Casio watch and waterboarding them in Guantanamo until they gave up info. I wish I was joking. I didn't know that. It's like poisoning a water supply. There's no guarantee who you'll kill. Like what currently happened in the West Bank. Yeah. Yeah, Israel gets to do that too, though.
You heard from Hassan Nasrallah that this was the most devastating, most humiliating blow, unprecedented for them. So yes, they are in many, many ways, they are weakened by it. And the question will be, they will now feel honor bound. And this is what we're hearing from Hassan Nasrallah. He talked about a reckoning. They have to show that they are able and willing to strike back.
There's a lot of Orientalism happening right here. And if you're oblivious to this, you know, take it from a guy who at least is from this part of the world. They're honor bound. This is a violation here. I'll use like terminology from the Western world for you to understand. Okay, bro, you're American. I am, but I'm Turkish as well. And I grew up in Turkey, and Orientalism works in mysterious ways. Right here, when she says they are honor bound, that they're humiliated, she is not talking about this as though this is a sovereign nation whose national sovereignty has been violated, and that they have, under international law, an obligation and a right to respond and retaliate. Oh, they're just like, you know, barbarians who are honor bound to basically retaliate that because they're humiliated and scared and worried. And not that, like, you know, this is a political organization and a political movement that also has facets in like civil governance that would be understandably frustrated by the sovereignty of their nation being violated by their southern neighbors.
And yet again today, even with the buzzing of the aircraft lower than ever before, there's this constant message from Israel: we know where you are and we can get you, even in your hands.
And only in the last 10, 15 minutes, we've seen Antony Blinken. This time he's in Paris. He's been shuffling around both the region and other Western capitals, again asking, pleading for de-escalation. But every step is the opposite of that. Where is diplomacy, do you think, within all of what we're seeing?
I wonder who's doing the de-escalation. And I wonder who's the one who needs to de-escalate. I just can't seem to place I just can't seem to figure out. Like, Antony Blinken could say, we need to de-escalate all day, every day. But, like, you know, you have the power to get your ally to do that. You're just not using it.
He was in Tel Aviv when these tensions were ratcheted up, when they added this new Lebanon war aim to their list already, the Gaza list, including, of course, bringing the hostages home. Hassan Nasrallah today made it clear that the border would not be safe and calm, that the residents would not return home in the north of Israel until there was a ceasefire in Gaza. That is the view of Hezbollah. So
serious question. For those of you who are like just now paying attention to this, like, doesn't this kind of feel like Israel doesn't give a shit about its own citizens and only uses them as like a talking point to justify its much larger agenda of endless conquest in the region? Oh, we added to our war aims. Oh, the 60,000 Israelis that used to live in northern Israel, they can no longer live in their homes. The more this continues, the more people feel less safe in Tel Aviv and shit, the more they're just gonna leave Israel. And if you have the opportunity to live in Israel or live in Paris, if you have the opportunity to live in Israel or live in America, eventually you're gonna be like, yeah, this shit, I'm gonna live in America. This sucks. And when that happens, it's Jover, and it's already happening. I don't think Israel, even from their own personal aims, their own personal ambitions, recognizes that reality. It's like, you know, if you'd rather live in like Boca Raton or Brooklyn or Long Island or fucking Israel, where you might get struck with an Ansar Allah hypersonic missile, yeah, I think you would probably choose Boca Raton. So they're cooking their own political aims of like settling all the lands in the region, because the reality is the Haredi population, no matter how much they fuck, there's not going to be enough like psychopathic, rabid, far right settlers to resettle all of this area. It's just not going to work. You're going to run out of people.